What's happening, guys? So today, as you can see, I got all new Cleveland wedges here in the dojo. We're going to test through some of these new hydrophobic wedges that Cleveland has produced. So apparently now they have wedges that have grooved it out in such a way that helps keep the spin up while there's wet. So we're going to test it. I mean, flashback, I don't know, back when everybody started to figure out Bryson was crazy. We're going to spritz the golf ball. We're going to spritz the club face. And we're going to see if these wedges are actually hydrophobic. It's in the RTX line. Plus, for all you high handicappers out there, I'm going to give it a run and see what I think about these Smart Sole with these huge bounces on the bottom. And we'll talk about those as well in this video. So if you got the problems around the short game green and you're not that skilled yet, those could be some good wedges for you. Let's get to work. Guys, if you would be so kind though, before we talk about all the secrets in these new wedges, please like and subscribe below. Share the videos with your friends if you like the information, as we discover what's going on with these Cleveland wedges when they're wet and dry, and the different styles between that Smart Sole RTX wedge. And hopefully you enjoy it and share with your buddies, and I appreciate your support. And let's get into this video and talk about how these Cleveland wedges might find their way into your bag this year. So first things first, we have kind of your three wedges that run for you from your mid handicap to your low handicap, and that's your CBX line and RTX line. Now the CBX has also upgraded their hustle to a full face wedge, which is actually pretty dope. I'm always a big fan of full face wedges. Getting the grooves high up on the toe really helps around those short game shots where you're trying to hit it like a little more of a high pitch out of rough. Get a little extra groove on the top, helps you out with keeping some spin on the ball, even in those rough like scenarios. But the big selling point today is these hydrophobic wedges. We'll do a little close-up here of the RTX hydrophobic face. And what you can see is there's milling out on the toe, and that milling out on the toe and in the groove line apparently is helping displace some of that water. So we're going to put some of those Titleist RCT balls here with TrackMan behind it, see if that really happens. We'll wet the ball down, we'll wet the wedge down, see how the spin rate holds up while the ball are wet. See if the spin rate changes, see if the spin rate stays the same. Be entertaining to see nonetheless. Plus, RTX also has a full face wedge. So these full face wedges, very similar to the CBX full face wedge, also with that hydrophobic design. Now the interesting nugget is, in these wedges, as the loft changes, the groove pattern changes as well. We'll snap a little screenshot of that, show you what I'm talking about there. These different patterns in the different grooves can affect how the ball flies, takes off based off the loft of your club in your hand. So really interesting stuff by Cleveland this year. Really kind of excited to see how this hydrophobic wedge does. And then we'll crack into what I consider more your high handicap, less skilled golfer wedges with these Smart Soles that pretty much make it impossible to chunk. See how they feel, see how they do. I kind of already know, have a bias because of where I'm at with my game, but I think for those high handicap golfers, that could be really good. So let's start making some golf swings. You can see on the CBX, the grooves on this thing are pretty slick. Got a little extra happening out here outside your traditional groove line out on the toe. And these hydrophobic, sorry, using real words there, wedges, let's see if they can keep the spin rate down. And here you can see the Cleveland full toe options. You can see there's a lot that's happening there. Loving the full toe, gets it out there where you can have this nice high toe hit from the rough or open face shots that give you a little bit more spin action around the greens. So here you can see the different bounce options. The C wedge, that little chipping wedge we were just talking about, and the G and S, what you would anticipate, gap and sand. And you can see how wide that bounce is, that camber, really helping on those shots if you struggle around the green to keep the bounce in the air and keep your wedge out of the dirt. So hydrophobic wedge, gonna do it without water anyways at the moment. Make a few passes at the ball. We got RCT, TrackMan technology, Titleist Pro Vs, Pro V1Xs down here, and let's just take a few cuts at it and see what numbers we produce. I'm not gonna lie, that first swing felt like I hit it with a cannon. I didn't hit it super awesome, but even there, I didn't hit it super awesome. It still said 11,000 RPMs on the 90-yard shot. Another 90-yard shot. I got the 60-degree wedge here, so it's going 90 for me. Usually a 58 goes about 95-ish for me, so that makes sense. But I'm getting 12,000 RPMs on the first three swings, or two swings. We're going to hit a third one, see what the RPM rate looks again as I crack it one more time. So just a little 5-yard pull, as you can tell. Kind of the old pro not moving as well today. But 11,600 was the lowest RPM rate I got, and I got upwards of that. Last one was almost 12,000 RPMs on an 81-yard shot. That's bonkers. I'm here to tell you. I hit all those pretty much perfectly. It feels so solid. It's a very harder feel. So if you're a soft, malleable face wedge lover, probably not going to like how it feels, because it really feels like you're hitting it with a baseball bat. Now, part of it could be off my mat, but at the end of the day, though, numbers don't lie. 3 swings in a row, lowest RPM rate was 11,600. I could bore you by hitting a bunch of more shots, but I got a really good feeling. That's not going to change. So let's wet this puppy down, get it, I was going to say moist, but let's get it wet, get the balls wet, and let's see what kind of numbers we produced now. So we don't have a spray bottle, but I have a Stanley Cup I got for Christmas. So we're just going to wet it down. Heck, it's hydrophobic to the point where it doesn't even have water on the face. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so that's kind of keeping some water on there. So we're going to try and keep as much water on the face in the grooves the best that I can. And then we're going to wet down the old golf ball. So the ball is definitely sopping wet. Definitely water in the grooves. Let's run it again, see what it does to spin rate. I felt it slip on the face a little bit, but it still says 11,900. That's crazy. Let's do this again. A little water on the old ball. A little more water on the old club face. I'm going to try and keep as much water on that club face as I can. I mean, heck, it's wet even where I'm hitting it right now, so that might affect the next few shots. What are the other wedges? I got hit in the face with water, okay? That ball was soaked. There we go. 8,000 RPMs. That seems a little bit more, making more sense. I mean, that area is so wet. I literally, you know how you chunk a wedge and you get it all up in your face? I didn't chunk it, and I just got sprayed. $9,800. All right, so now I think there's a little more wet around the hitting mat. The mat itself's wet. I'm getting sprayed in the face the last 2 swings. The balls, I'm always re-wetting the ball. The wedge is still wet. And now we're seeing 9,800 from 11,900, so we're down 200 RPMs. Hit that first one probably a little chunk maybe, since I got 7,800 on the RPM rate. Hit that one okay. 10,400. Now, I'm going to shoot straight. I'm going to pull up one of my wedges, because I think on an 80-yard shot, 90-yard shot with one of my wedges, I get about 10,000 RPMs when it's dry. Let's test that out. All right, so I'm going to scoot back just a touch to get away from that wet area. Clean my face off if you notice the dirt came off there. And I'm going to put a move on it with my 58. See what we get. So that was a clean hit with my 58. Well, I got 12,000 with mine. So apparently I am putting a very spinny move on the golf ball at the moment. 95-yard shot, like I told you guys. The 58. That one jumped on me a little bit. Yeah, it came off high for some reason. That was weird. I think I got into some of that moisture. But you can see, like, I got into the moisture with my wedge and it went down to 7,000. So let's run that again. This is actually a good little test if you're still watching. The wet face on the TaylorMade. Wet face. Ooh, ice. Even a little bit of ice for you guys. So that went down to 7,000 with the wet hydrophobic wedge from Cleveland. It was still hovering around 9.5 to 10. Oh, I definitely felt that slip off the face. That slipped 5,000 RPMs. This is where it's getting interesting, folks. The difference in spin when the wedges are wet. Huge difference. Another one just slipping 5,600. So there you go. That's the difference. Let's grab the other wedge. When things get wet, that's where this thing starts to perform. So it's not crazy better when it's dry, but when it's been wetted down and I'm hitting it off this wet mat, faces are wet on the club face and the golf balls are wet, still kind of keeping the spin up. Yeah, that feels way more solid. 9,900. So I'll tell you what, Cleveland produced a product. The RTX hydrophobic wedge is kicking my wedge's butt. So if you're an early morning dewy player, or you just play in all kinds of crazy conditions, I'm telling you right now, this is a legit wedge. The only thing you gotta overcome is that it feels hard as a rock. My wedge feels way softer, and I don't even think TaylorMade has a soft wedge. So hard feeling, but spin producing when everything's wet, like we just saw there. TaylorMade barely getting 6,000 RPMs when it's wetted down. This thing is still cranking about 10,000. That's huge on wet days, but not a big difference when they're dry. Let's check out these new Smart Sole wedges. So in typical Matt Walter fashion, probably should have done the wet testing after I tried these out, but we're just gonna move away from that wet spot. We'll be fine. So these Smart Sole wedges, really interesting. Huge bounce characteristics, camber, covering a wider area on the bottom. It's going to be really good for all you that struggle with the shorter shots around the chipping green. Now, I'll tell you right now, when I look out my window behind the camera, it's dormant, it's been raining, the grass is wet, muddy, all that stuff. These conditions can be pretty helpful to keep you from burying the wedge in the ground. The other side of this token is you don't have to open the face as much when you get a wedge with this much bounce. So this is the sand wedge, the gap wedge, and their C wedge. You can see have variable width, so we'll close in on that. And as you look at the different sizes of these, there's different bounce characteristics, different widths amongst all of them, right? So we're gonna grab the sand wedge. And let's just hit this little sandy wedge here and see how it feels on a full. And we'll try a couple shorter shots. Notice they're in graphite shafts. So again, anticipating not really for your higher handicap, higher speed player. Feels about like the RTX. 12,000 RPMs. That's impressive. I don't know, Cleveland, you're selling me a little bit here. Not gonna lie. Let's try another one. It's a little bit harder to look at. Definitely doesn't look as sexy than the RTX does. Didn't hit that one as solid. It was a little wimpy. Still about 11,000 RPMs though. Feels very similar to the RTX. Very similar. $11,000. Like I said, without boring you, hitting 100 of these, hitting 3 in a row, all over 10,000 RPMs for a what I would call a higher handicap wedge, incredible spin rates. Usually you lose that when you hit with these clubs. They usually don't spin as much, and they're very frustrating. I might be changing my opinion on some of these. Now I'm kind of curious about that C wedge. I've never seen a C wedge before. I don't nerd out as much as some of you guys do. I would be curious to see what happens here. I believe, if my information is correct, this is mostly a chipping wedge. So you get it set up. You can give yourself a run-of-the-mill back and through chipperoo, right? But that's boring. I want to hit it and see how far it goes, right? Now, I will say this. The way it sets up gives you a lot of forward press. Again, like a ton. You get that set up, you can see how much it leans. But I'm never satisfied. It's very short. Very short. So definitely just a little chipping tool. But I gotta know how far it goes. Oh, I crushed it. That's gonna go forever. Wow. 135. Well, I mean, if you needed a pitching wedge, I'm guessing that's about where this loft's at. About how far my pitching wedge goes. I mean, I'm destroying this club. 142. Yeah. So, if you need it in place of your pitching wedge, you could do that as well. But mostly just a chipping tool. And again, with these smart sole wedges, what I would tell you to keep in mind is you don't have to do all the fancy tricks. Just let the club settle itself on the ground and have its natural rest of shaft lean and heel and toe. You can have it bent lie angle wise. That'll probably help you to get to your natural setup. But you don't want to mess with the shaft lean forward and back. You just want to kind of keep that pretty neutral. Hit a couple of chips with this thing or rope a 140-yard shot with it apparently. I'll put my disclaimer at the bottom that only I can do that. And maybe some of you out there, let me know if you can. But really kind of impressed with this wedge of the RPMs, well, not just this one, but the other two as well. The RPMs that it can produce, given the fact that it's a huge sole at the bottom. And the dark looks pretty cool. I kind of like that dark look. And speaking of darker finishes, that RTX full face finish coming in the all black, very nice indeed. Loving the wedges, loving the grooves on these Clevelands this year. Gonna sell a ton of them, and if you're interested in it, holler at me. We'll get you here in Murfreesboro and get you right with some of these new Cleveland wedges. Till next time, gang, thanks for watching the video. We'll see you later.